Everybody knows the housing market is insane right now. And one of our CrossFitters, Nathan Kerpan, a mortgage coach here in our area, is one of our CrossFitters. We're going to learn from him today about his mortgage coaching business, the origin story and the brand, and dive a little deeper and learn about Nathan as a man, a founder, an athlete, and an entrepreneur. It's going to be a fascinating conversation. Stick around.
Welcome to the CrossFit Edwardsville Community Podcast, where we hear and learn from our coaches, CrossFitters, and Glen Ed community leaders. Now, here are your hosts, Dallas and Greg.
What is up, everybody? Great to have you all here at the CFE Community Podcast. I am your co-host, Dallas Amston, your Communicate to Succeed coach, helping introverted entrepreneurs pull together their presentation so that they can be their authentic self on stage. But love these conversations. Again, we always get to meet and learn with our CFE Cross coaches, get to know some of our CFE CrossFitters, and then occasionally chat with locally owned Glen Ed business leaders. And with me, as always, my co-host, G Scale. How are you, brother?
Hey, I'm feeling great. Got a good workout in this morning and excited to hang out with not just a fellow business owner and somebody who is a thought leader and prolific content producer in the space of mortgage coaching and teaching neophytes like myself what we need to know about being an intelligent home buyer. My friend, Nathan Kerpan of the Kerpan Group at Benchmark Mortgage. Nathan, welcome to the podcast.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. This is awesome. I've watched kind of the genesis of this podcast and I'm excited to be here.
Cool, man. So by way of introduction, Nathan Kerpan actually officially joined the CrossFit Edwardsville Community of Excellence on September 21st of 2018. And since that day, we have 137 confirmed Nathan Kerpan CrossFit workouts with us. And he has a pretty awesome weight loss trend line. That's tracked awesome. On an app on his phone over the years. So Dallas, what are we doing today?
Well, today on the podcast, we get to learn directly from Nathan about his mortgage coaching business, the origin story, the brand there. And then also we're going to dive a little deeper. Nathan, I hope you're ready for this, man. We get to learn about you, as G said, as a man, a founder, an athlete, and an entrepreneur. So are you excited, Nate?
Oh, I love it.
You cool if I call you Nate?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Awesome.
Just don't call me late for dinner.
Don't be late, Nate. I love that. So first we want to ask a few questions about you, Nathan, the athlete. Let's break the ice with some of the easier ones, right?
Sure.
So with over 130 CrossFit WODs under your belt now, you're going to have some perspective. What would you say is your all-time favorite one or two CrossFit workouts?
Oh, goodness. That's a great question. To name one specifically, I guess there was one recently that was challenging. I think it went by the name of Cindy. And I love the name, the nomenclature of the different WODs. That's always a lot of fun. I think we had a bunch of groupings of Taylor Swift esque names there for a week or two.
Sure.
But a recent one that pops to mind was Cindy. I couldn't necessarily recite exactly what we did, but I know I was like, wow, Cindy is a beep.
Well, there's a lot of history behind the girl name WOD. So, G, you want to tell them those real fast and for our listeners?
Sure. And in the early days, the founder of CrossFit, who's, he's a little bit of a rough character and highly charismatic in his own way. And he said that he would name particularly challenging workouts after girls because these workouts would leave you laying on your back, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the heck just happened, just like a woman. So he said he named this workout Cindy, which it's 20 minutes. And in 20 minutes, you get as many rounds and reps as possible of 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 15 air squats. It's one of our most famous CrossFit workouts. And we use it as a way of preparing and training for doing the epic Murph workout at the end of May. So we recently did Cindy as a training piece for that.
Yep. So Nate, another question for you then. Obviously Cindy stuck out to you. Would you say that's the hardest workout you've ever done, or have you experienced another CrossFit workout that you would say, nope, That's the hardest. That's the one that if I never touch it again, I won't.
I had the blessing of being in there today, and today was pretty challenging, and it involved kettlebell squats or
goblet squats.
Yeah, there we go. Squats, and I'll tell you that one. I don't remember the exact name, even though it was today, but might need to be renamed Mac Truck.
Especially for the legs, right? So today's workout, you did some running, you did some ab work, and then with time left of a certain time window, as many goblet squats as possible. And holy cow, Nathan, holy legs.
Yeah, let's just say I didn't go home and do any extra running after the fact like yesterday's WOD.
That's hilarious.
So what are the exercises or WODs that you get the most excited to see in the programming? Like what are your favorite CrossFit exercises, favorite CrossFit things?
I'm a huge advocate for always be improving, right? Mm-hmm. And so candidly, just the scheduling and going in and being consistent is my main thing that I really favorite. Mm-hmm. A specific exercise. Gosh, I don't know that I have one. I know I'm proud that I've gotten a lot better with the rope climbs.
Yeah,
that was in our workout today as well. I felt like we had 2 WODs, by the way.
We did.
You did.
So definitely proud of the rope climbs, because that takes both strength and agility.
Yes.
And I've improved where I'm successfully completing the rope climbs.
That's so cool.
Very cool. So Nate, how and why then did you get started with CrossFit? You mentioned consistency. Say again?
Going back in time a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, going back in time a little bit because you've been around, a few years now. So how and why did you first get started with CrossFit Edwards?
Yeah, a few years with a pandemic in between, right?
Right.
Right.
So, really it came down to wanting to be the best version of myself. Knowing that physically I was not, I'm a very A-type personality, so I have a very big tendency of overcommitting to things when I do commit to something. And
we have no idea what that's like. Do you, G?
Yeah. It's not like we're talking to A-type personalities here right now.
Right. And so I knew I needed a community, because I'd gone through my own cycle of working out on my own, going to the gym, working out at home. And so it either became this all or nothing. And I'd come off a huge season of nothing.
Mm.
Mm.
And so I needed an environment, and I knew the regular, gym experience was not going to hold me accountable. So I wanted accountability. I wanted a community. I wanted something that could be very finite and organized. And I didn't really know what I was getting. I didn't research CrossFit per se. I feel like the Lord kind of put it in my path. Mm-hmm. And here I am. So, and much thanks to Coach G, because his consistency both in the gym and outside the gym has been the key to me sticking around this long.
Well, cool. So you have been here for now 3.5 years. Nathan, what keeps coming back?
I mean, a lot of it's just that bullet pointed list of, I know that I just got my son involved, right? My 16-year-old son just graduated his foundations type classes yesterday. And the biggest thing I preached to him is, look, number one, this is going to be scalable, right? So no matter your ability, agility, strength, whatever that may be, CrossFit's not just the CrossFit Games that maybe you'll find if you go to YouTube. It's very meets you where you are. And so that's something that, because I'm in there, sure, there's an aspect of I want to keep up with the guy or gal next to me, but I'm really in there to beat myself, right? I'm going to beat what I did last week. I'm going to feel that improvement. Yeah. So that's staying with that. The other thing is that nowhere, any time in my life have I been able to just go spend an hour, right? 45 minutes to an hour in and out and get the level of fitness that I'm getting, from CrossFit. And if you ask me about like what do I see in the programming, candidly, I'm the guy that doesn't look at the programming because I'm a big psychology guy, and I'm not going to let myself get psyched out. So I love being able to walk in the door, know that there's a 5-minute AMRAP warm up, know that my coach is going to be there to encourage me and show us the movements. I mean, I could walk you through a class, and I just know the confidence of being able to do that, because the prior version that I said, wasn't working, the season before me, just being all out versus all in, was 3+ hours a day, A-type personality, working out. I'd run to the gym, I'd run back. I mean, it was just too much, right?
Sure. You have to be more efficient, especially as a busy professional like yourself. You've got a business that you operate, you have a family, you have kids, quite a few, as we'll talk about here soon. So you have there's a whole tribe that depends on Nathan. And so Nathan needs to be very efficient with his Nathan time. But we'd love to hear from you, like your experience. How has CrossFit affected how you look, how you feel, how you perform as an exercise, as a man, as an athlete for life? Talk to us about that a little bit.
No, perfect. I mean, just in the last year, because we came off that season of 2020, right? We're not going to give it a name. And, and, I'd gotten, unfortunately, in that season up to the highest weight, the poorest condition in my life. I was 254 pounds. And since just in the last 12 months, getting serious, getting back to consistent, of those 130 WODs, I imagine statistically most of them have been in the last year. And having a goal, right? So goals in and outside of CrossFit. I've been able to get all the way down to as low as 213 pounds.
Good for you, man.
That's awesome.
Major weight loss, but the fitness that came with that was the greater measurement, and the goal of going with my son to Philmont Scout Ranch out in the middle of the mountains of New Mexico, the Southern Rockies, was my big goal there. So outside of CrossFit helped me, get to that goal, conquer that 80-mile backpacking trek that we did, camping, everything we did last year, and keeping up with literally 11 other teenage boys with no sweat. Like, that's what CrossFit helped me do. To even just last weekend, running around the kids at the park playing tag, right? And what was funny is I was basically the only adult. All these other adults are sitting, right, watching their kids run and play tag. And I had to step away for like 5 minutes to make or take a phone call. And I come back, and the other kid's parents said, like, they stopped playing tag because the big kid left.
That's awesome.
I love that.
That's great.
That's something that I love also, Nathan, is being able to be the active dad. I'm not the dad that has to sit on the sidelines while my kids are in the trampoline park or while my kids are throwing the Frisbee around. I can actually participate with them and lead them by example. And I want you to know, like, your kids totally notice that. Like,
the other kids were calling me dad. The other kids were calling me dad because, my kids are running around the multitudes calling me dad. So they're like, yeah, dad, hey, because, you're playing tag. So you're trying to identify who's it. Well, dad's it. So that's why that's kind of an awkward sounding thing, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. And so I've known you for years now, Nathan, and I've always known you to be a highly goal-oriented, goal-driven individual, whether personally or professionally. So Dallas is going to help us transition now to learning more about about Nathan, the entrepreneur and business leader.
Yeah. So, I mean, Nate, your stories so far are awesome. I love the dad thing. I'm in love with that idea. But let's switch gears. Let's talk about you as one of the founders of the Kerpan Group at Benchmark Mortgage, because there's an entrepreneur in you as well. So is this your first business? Tell us more a little bit about your background as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'll start out with none of them could catch dad either. That was another important thing. So, but yeah, no,
we call that, can we, I don't know. A lot of people talk about the dad bod. Can we come up with a new hashtag, like hashtag dad brag? Can we make that a thing? Hashtag dad brag.
That might be something to that. There's a little bit of a ring to that.
Yeah.
There we go.
That might catch on. There needs to be some sort of title we bestow upon a dad that's like fitter than his kids. That should be a thing, I think. And for the record, let it be known that young Dominic Kerpan, the 16-year-old who is joining Nathan in CrossFit, is aspiring to be on the level of fitness that his dad is right now. I think that's a very cool thing. And to be clear, we have objective, quantifiable, measurable, observable, repeatable data on everything. And young Dominic Kerpan has not caught his dad yet.
I'm sure it won't take him too long, but I've got progress I'm making, and I'm really excited to see the progress he's going to make. Because he had his own challenges being 16 years old and already growing to just shy of 6'4". So, all that growth, when he was struggling with just the muscles and the tendons and all the things that go with that rapid growth. The scalability of CrossFit again was what came to mind. I'm like, look, you need to keep use it or lose it, right?
Sure.
And so so let's transition. Sorry.
No, that's cool. No, so go ahead and just talk to us a little bit about your background as an entrepreneur. Again, Kerpan Group at Benchmark Mortgage. Talk to us about that a little bit, Nate.
Fantastic. So, to try not to dive, intricately, microscopically deep, been blessed to be in the financial services business and industry now for a little bit more than 22 years.
Okay.
In the people business, even longer than that, working with people, interacting people, and serving people. But financial services specifically, more than 22 years now. And I first was trained more classically in financial coaching and financial planning. And until I come across, as a blue collar kid from Wood River, Illinois, I come across this product called the mortgage. And at the time, a young financial planner, young financial coach, most of my clientele, more than 80% of my clientele I would come into were struggling, paycheck to paycheck, how to squeeze more out of what they had. And I landed into this mortgage product, which isn't really a traditional product that financial planners and financial coaches really do anything with, even back then when it was a much more Wild West sort of business.
Sure.
And so that was really the genesis was, there's something going on here. It was a time in the world where rates were going down, a lot of opportunity that could be generated from that. Equity was increasing. So it was a great way to help, more than 80% of my client base either become a homeowner, so stop paying their landlord's rent, or restructure their finances in a way that could help them reach retirement or even just start saving for retirement.
I got it. And so that was kind of what opened your eyes that, hey, there might be something in the mortgage space specifically. So then how did the Kerpan Group come to be? What's the origin story?
Yeah, no, and there's one extra piece that I haven't really been owning until recent years, and it was my own home buying experience. So as a young entrepreneur, as a young salesperson and a financial coach, I bought my first house. And before I even, I knew nothing about mortgage. I knew about all these other things. I was securities licensed, insurance licensed, etc. But I knew nothing about mortgage. And I come to find out, neither did the people that were giving me mortgages. Neither did the realtors involved.
But they don't have the this.
Yeah. I mean, there was no advisement, there was no coaching. And so in my own first home buying experience, I basically vowed to never let other people that I come in contact with experience such a lack of coaching, right? Mm-hmm. Such a lack of educating and empowering, right? Because these are financial tools. How often do you go around, my first home was like $87,000, okay? Mm-hmm. But how often do you go around spending tens, let alone hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions in some markets, People just don't do that, right? It's not an everyday thing. So I vowed to create that. And so fortunately, the early season, I was just mano a mano, worked with some companies, worked with a broker dealer, kind of created through networking relationships, just put together a hodgepodge of who would let me help my clients the way I knew they needed to be helped. Then came along my amazing bride, Jennifer Kerpan, the better half, the brains, the beauty. I'm maybe just the brawn of the Kerpan group. And she was actually already, fully degreed in education. So she was working in the educator sphere. So wanted to be an elementary ed teacher. But that season, the only openings were high school. The only openings were middle school. And that just wasn't where she wasn't really finding where she wanted to be in that. Plus, a young, cute, blonde teacher, how that works in the high school. We've all seen that movie. So she didn't want to be treated like a piece of meat either, right?
Sure.
And so I said to her, I can't do this alone. Why don't you help me run the administrative side of this, and I'll run the people side of this. And that's how it was born. And so we've actually worked together side by side since August of 2002. So it'll be 20 years this year that she's put up with me. Not only, we were dating and engaged and therefore married, prior, during all that season. But at the same time, she's also like literally sometimes only 10 feet from me on a daily.
Sure. That's awesome, man.
There are two angles on this that I want to really appreciate for a second before we move on. The first is that I've been in conversations many times with Nathan about for him to educate me about becoming a more knowledgeable person as I enter the home buying space. Because this is definitively, for almost anybody, the biggest purchase they will ever make. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars involved in this decision. It's a very big financial decision, and there's a lot to be considered. And I recognize the vastness of my ignorance as I'm entering into this. Like, there's just so much that I just don't know. And I will say that it is incredibly peace-giving and reassuring having somebody who actually really knows the ins and outs of this to kind of guide me through the early thought processes, the decision trees of what to do, what not to do. Is this the time? That sort of thing. So for me, as somebody who doesn't know this space, it is really helpful to have a coach. Like, I don't try doing fitness without a coach. I don't do business without a coach. It would be asinine for me to try and make a massive purchase that it may take me 15 to 30 years to pay off without a coach. So that's the first thing I really want to appreciate in that. And the second is working alongside your spouse has it's a whole list of like blessings and challenges, right? Because Nathan and I actually have not talked about this before, like off air, but I know that for me and Caroline, it can be a very difficult juggling act to be like spouses a big part of the time, and then business partners a big part of the time, and trying to identify, like, is there a line? Like, it's almost like two different worlds that you're navigating together. You know what I mean? You want to speak to that a little bit, Nathan?
Yeah. No, it's actually funny. About a year ago, maybe two, we use a special communication app called Telegram, right? And we specifically created threads. There's a personal thread, and it's just her and I.
Yeah.
And then there's a business thread, which is just her and I. But we're like trying to make sure that our conversations are kept in one or the other, just for that peace and that separation, because it is, when you work together with your spouse, pillow talk often is, well, I want to do this for my client. I want to do, what's the recent update on that? Breakfast, dinner. And then like, I even last night caught myself starting to ask a question, which Jennifer is such a doer. Like, you can't start a question and she not want to know what it was and or execute getting it done. And I said,
Right.
don't worry.
Caroline's the same way.
I said, don't worry. I go, I'm just going to message you.
Yeah.
I did that. And within about 40 minutes, because we were doing dinner with the family and everything else, she responded. But I'm like, wait a minute. I got to bring, this is family time, kids at the table, that sort of thing.
In our CrossFit community, we have so many like go-getter business leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners, and I think there's an appreciable level of difficulty trying not to have your business persona and your business life bleed into your personal life, because what happens is that like every dinner conversation will inevitably go back to the business. Every weekend off, inevitably it comes up in conversation, and it's very hard to turn it off when it becomes like a part of who you are. So yeah. I know that for us, probably for Dallas, for you, Nathan, like your business is an extension of your identity. Like who you are as a person is expressed through this business. It's basically another child that you have, and you can't not be the parent to your kids. Like once you birth this thing, it is yours no matter what, come hell or high water. As long as that business is there, like it is a part of who you are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the integrity of it, the quality, the fact that not only does it matter from a critical and detailed standpoint of how we coach and advise on what are products and services as mechanisms of achieving people's goals, but also the human side, right? That emotional driving factor behind the American dream, which, is apple pie, homeownership, entrepreneurialism, the American flag behind me. I mean, all of that.
Be your own boss, all the things.
Yeah, all those things just really compound together, and just being able to relate, right? Because that first experience I had was very emotionally driven. It was very, and that's what most people are going through. And to be both emotionally aware, so I have a high emotional IQ with a high technical skill and IQ in what we do. You definitely, you go to bed owning it, you wake up owning it. Your children have no choice but to own it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because you're kind of leaning into this idea here a little bit, Nate. So this thought of home ownership, this American dream, what you were just saying, what's really kind of the mission of the Kerpan Group? What would you say your mission statement or your vision statement is?
A good one-liner is our motto is champions for the American dream, just because, hence champ the dream, just because that is so unique.
Yeah.
The three of us just here, I mean, we can talk about that American dream, and yet it still have something unique for each of us.
Yeah.
And to me, that's probably what's been so sticky about serving people in this industry as long as we have, and what will stick with me, for the next 50 years, Lord willing, right?
Yeah.
But to really sum up what we do for people and what we strive to do is our goal is to help people make smart decisions when it comes to buying, selling, or refinancing their home. And that's very centric to what we do every day. So that smart decision, smart homeownership, smart using that traditional acronym, which is, being specific and measurable and actionable and realistic and time bound, is how we use that term smart. Not to smart somebody in the head or question their knowledge of it, but to really guide them through a process.
So what's the best part of your work? Like if there was one thing that you'd love to experience every day at the Kerpan Group, what would that thing be?
Gosh, the best part, it really, I mean, when it comes to the home buying, it's really helping people get those keys. I mean, that's that, whether it's a first time purchase or you're buying a vacation home or an investment property, that symbolizes something very significant. And there's a journey that has to be, rigorously gone through to get there. Real estate's not a one-day transaction. Mortgage is not a one-day transaction. And so, seeing those smiles on their faces, or that refinance client from 15 years ago just refinanced with me yesterday. And just the integrity of doing a good enough job that we're there alongside that family for those 15 years. And at the same time, the positive change that they could receive and wanted from that reorganization, that smart decision to refinance was unique to them and to their goals and the season they're in, which is more of a retirement season.
Sure.
Everyone's in a different season. So that's what we like to talk about that as well.
Well, so the flip side of that coin, best part, obviously, is all that. I get to ask the fun one. What's the worst part, the hardest part about what you do?
You can make one problem go away forever.
There you go. That's a good way to ask it.
Some would say, because we've solved for this fairly well, some would say the nature of our industry is very 24/7, right? But if I had to ask for one thing to go away, it wouldn't be that aspect. It would be people's preparedness, right? People's ability and willing to engage in that preseason time period and be a little less shiny object driven.
Sure.
And more, again, smart about the process. And that's why I say, that smart homeownership journey starts before you own. It goes through its various seasons of ownership, right? Different seasons of life, and doesn't end, in my opinion, until you're building leaving a lasting legacy.
That's good.
It sounds like the challenge for you is that some people are a little keen to rush into a purchase of a home, and you're trying to get them to intelligently pump the brakes a bit to go through the proper thought processes first before chasing the shiny object.
Yeah, I mean, the ideal, somebody asked me the other day, what's your ideal client? And it was easier because we're so, again, as a financial planner and financial coach, we're very widely versed.
Yeah.
And we definitely have a hero-centric message. So we really support our community heroes. But that being said, somebody that's looking for a cheeseburger and French fry experience, of mortgage, they can try to get that, on a .com, but that's not my ideal client. My ideal client, and don't get me wrong, we do same day pre-approvals. We do same day, even full underwrites at Benchmark. We're a powerhouse of a company, billions of dollars in loans closed in the last 12 months. But our ideal client's not somebody looking for, do you want to fry with that sort of transaction?
Somebody more thoughtful.
Do you want a backyard with that? No.
Yeah. I mean, obviously their needs matter, but just the world that we're in is so very driven by that shiny object. And unfortunately, the .coms, the advertising that gets put in front of you and beat over your head is all driven on things that make it seem very insignificant. They downplay, they what I call it, they commoditize what it is that you're doing, so that you don't fear it. And I don't want people to fear it, right? I want them to embrace it and know that I'm not the hero. You're the hero in the story.
Yeah.
I'm just the guide. I'm the coach. I'm not Hercules. You're Hercules. I'm that guy that helped train and get Hercules out of his brain space so that he could go and conquer.
I often tell some of my clients, you are Obi-Wan Kenobi. Your client is Luke Skywalker. They're the ones who want to learn the ways of the Force. You get to teach them the ways of the Force. So I use some very similar reference to that. What would you say then, Nate, would be the most important advice that you would give to an aspiring homeowner or a home buyer? Right now, the market's a little, the inventory is very low. The market moves very quickly at the moment. So what would be the most important advice you'd give somebody in that space?
Simply be smart, engage with someone, would love for that to be us, but engage with someone that is willing to come alongside you, be that coach, and not steer you. Like, I'm not the captain of the ship, so my job's not to steer you. My job's to empower you. So make sure that you're being empowered. Make sure that you're getting that from both your real estate expert or your realtor. They need to have a coaching style, not just somebody that's wham bam approach, right? Your lender needs to have that style, and start it sooner than later. You're not a burden. So many people, they think of themselves as a burden because of maybe their lack of knowledge or understanding. So it's easier to focus on how pretty houses are and that fun part of it. And we're going to help you have some fun, but you're going to do it in a smart way. And so truly, work with someone and engage in the process sooner than later.
I like that.
I feel like there's applicability and value to this thought process, both in fitness and, it seems, with the home buying thing, because in our fitness space, we're always coaching and encouraging and teaching that this is a journey, it's a process, and we need to embrace it as a process. And we're probably not looking at a target just 3-4 days a week from now. We're looking at target months down the line, years down the line, right? And we'll be making progress. We'll be making meaningful forward movement throughout this journey. But it is a journey. It is a process. And it's really, really smart to have somebody to guide you along the process, because otherwise, in our fitness space, we know that everybody makes way better, way faster progress with an intelligent guide. I'm sure it's the same with mortgages. So you probably have seen some things, Nathan. People do some really silly and stupid things. What are the most common errors that you see home buyers making these days?
Goodness. Just to pull from recent conversation, making sure that you're picking the right partner when it comes to home ownership. Whether you're married or unmarried, or those different dichotomies that exist. You're financially marrying each other, when you embark on a mortgage, whether that's a parent helping be a non-occupant co-signer with their child, or that's a boyfriend and girlfriend, or any variation thereof. You are truly financially committing to each other, and there's no way to get out of that except for to financially divorce and a refinance. And I've got clients right now that are facing that situation where they're going to have to reorganize that or refinance that process in a rather short time period.
Sure.
Where they just didn't, take that very seriously up front.
Yeah. It sounds like part of the issue is that some people are racing into home ownership in a relationship with a person that maybe is not the right match for them to be a partner for home ownership. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, and that could be shiny objects don't solve all things. Rarely do shiny objects solve your problems, right?
Right.
And so based on what you're pursuing, make sure that it again, it's why it's important to have that coaching, right? Yeah. It's why it's important to have a plan of where you're going, because there's two ways to China right now. There's two roads. One of them's longer than the other, but with both of them can get us there.
Yeah,
right? Probably more than two, right? So just planning that out, using some GPS and plotting the right coordinates on the map. That same thing needs to be applied to fitness. That same thing needs to be applied to business. That same thing needs to be applied to your finances.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I took an entrepreneurship class a long time ago. And there is one thing that above all stands out to me. I've referenced it in the podcast before. It was a very key lesson that the instructor taught us. He said that if you're forming a business, you need to be sure if you're going to be partnering with somebody, they're going to be your business partner, they have to have the same values as you, or the whole house will come crashing down. Yeah. Proverbially speaking, will burn down. It's so important to explore and identify you are certain you have the same values as this person before going into business with them, or extremely high level financial purchase.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think values sum up everything we've talked about here, right?
Yeah.
As far as who you're picking to partner with. And that's something that, 14 years now partnered with Benchmark. I've come into a realization with why Benchmark's such a powerhouse is their foundation, their moorings, their anchors, everything is based on values. The values of success, the values of relationship, the values of being dynamic, excellent at what you do, and bringing a positive attitude. Those are the core values.
Yeah.
And like you said, in relationships, you've got to find that matching core values in becoming, business partners. I tell people all the time, like you, Greg, you've got to make sure like that is like being married again, back to that financial marriage. That's a business marriage. You better a book I read years ago, E-Myth, is still relevant. Originally authored, I think, back in the 70s, remastered here in the last 15 to 20 years. Michael Gerber just expertly points out how entrepreneurialism is probably a shiny object, right? That's my little ad lib, right? But it's a myth if you don't do it the right way. It's going to be some version of hell, dare I say, if you don't approach it in a smart way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let me steer the subject here a little bit. I think all three of us could probably talk about the entrepreneurial game for hours on end. But I want to hear a little bit more about you, Nate, as the man. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing and childhood. We kind of heard how you got into the game that you're in now, but what was your family like growing up? Any special memories that you would say kind of shaped you as a person on this journey?
Absolutely. Number one, chiefly being my mother, raised mostly by her my entire life. And the biggest thing she poured into me consistently was, you can do it. Right? Just that summation of anything you put your mind to, Nathan, you can achieve. So that what the mind can conceive, it can achieve, has been something that, despite the turmoil of my upbringing, the first 10 years of my life spent moving more than 15 times over 10 different states by the age of 10, always being the new kid in school. So I had to invent or sometimes reinvent who I was in that new environment. Gifted me the gift of gab and personality. And then realizing, though, that despite the positive influence, I think all of us, something I've realized as of late is we all have a pivot point in our childhood, probably early teens, where we say, you know what, this isn't exactly how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this different. I know he has talked about that in his Genesis story of why he is who he is. And the same thing applies to me. Like this, moving all of a sudden and pulling up, not even having roots, like, getting to a point where like, wow, I think I have some roots. And like, oh, wait a minute, back in the station wagon.
Yep.
That's just not right. So home, like that American dream, home ownership, and I'm now living in a home longer than I've lived anywhere as an adult. Like it's like as the clock is ticking right now, it just barely passed that mark of living in one place longer than ever at the age of 41, almost 42.
I can relate to all of that, man. It's like your upbringing is very similar to mine. So fast forwarding to now, tell us about your family now. Like, you can tell us about significant others, other family, the many members of the Kerpan clan.
So it's interesting. I was an only child. Found out later in my teens that I had a half sister, which was a blessing, and she's amazing. DNA is an amazing thing, by the way, because totally raised apart, but could not be more similar. It's interesting, but being an only child, because that's who I was raised. I never sat back and go, man, I wish I had a bunch of siblings, because now here I am, 41 years old, 42 soon, with 7 children. So, they range from 24 years old down to 4 years old, and even the 4-year-old is now an uncle as well, because our oldest daughter and her husband,
Sure.
blessed us with a grandson 2 years ago.
Exciting.
So amazing wife, amazing life. And it does all these things we've talked about, bring turmoil to those relationships, make them unique, have an impact. And just that positive attitude and having a great environment of leaders, because you're the sum total of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And so I love that I'm a part of this community where I know I can tap into Greg in a way that's not just grabbing weights.
Yeah.
Right. We've had conversations that go beyond that. And it's a lot like this podcast. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of course. So
tell us. Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Dallas.
G. No, you, G. Go for it.
So tell us about other hobbies and interests outside the gym, Nathan. What do you do for fun besides fitness? And tell us about your friends. Do some shout outs to your people here.
Yeah, no, I've got some amazing friends. When you're as on like we are in the business, a lot of those that we work with are our best friends. Got a lot of great friends from years back. Do just various things like going out doing trap shooting and different things like that. Getting to work with various heroes in the community. So we've got a great heroes program. You can find out more at champthedream.com. And that heroes program allows us to work in the community with our first responders, our veterans, our active duty. So a lot of, our medical professionals and our educators. So that kind of well rounds that. And what I like is we look at our coaches at CrossFit as educators. We look at our pastors as educators. So we're not just talking K through 12 or university professors as educators. We're looking at the wide breadth of those people that are impacting your life. And that goes into the personal hobbies, right? Because whether it's taking a business trip with the John Maxwell organization, which I had the opportunity to be with John himself and 11 other people in Costa Rica back in December. That to me, personal development, growth, plus with people that you just love, that's huge. I could go on and on about those things, but a lot of it's very interwoven into who I am. And that's why showing up every day with Benchmark and the Kerpan Group as your mortgage coach really is a blessing, not a job.
Yeah. Well, so I'd like to dive just a little bit deeper on this, and I'm going to just reverse kind of questions as we ask them. Typically, you just mentioned John Maxwell. Who would be some other mentors? Thinking about you as a man and an entrepreneur, who would say would be some of the mentors who've been most influential on your personal life and or your business success, and maybe 1 or 2 key lessons you've learned from them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a Audible fan. So I have hundreds of books on Audible and consistently seeking and getting that perspective, because I look at books as a hack. So books are a life hack. They're an ability for you to absorb 40 plus years of life and wisdom that person has probably poured years into producing anyway, let alone their own life story. And so what a great way to hack that is just great books. And if I'd done one thing different over the last 20 plus years in business, it would have been more consistently applying, rinsing, and repeating that pursuit versus, I spent a good season there, probably as long as 10 years almost, of just going, okay, I've got this and I'm the man. And that didn't work, right? I had to grow. You're either growing or dying.
Yeah.
So other leaders, blessed to met John Maxwell and be friends, really call John a friend. Today, Brian McRae, who's actually
he's here in St. Louis.
Yeah, Brian's a friend of mine, mentor of mine, coach of mine. He and I talk on a weekly basis, and he's been a huge, consistent beacon of light in my life, and I pray that I am in his. And Jim McMahon, who's actually the president of Benchmark, one of our great leaders. He's just consistent and available. And then I can go all the way back to just people that I know as just little milestones that they saw and cared to sow into me, just opportunity, encouragement, words of encouragement, different things like that, and opportunity that I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you today. Even I can't even imagine what the divergence would have been.
Sure. Let's do a little bit of a lightning round. Now, Nathan. So first question up, how has a failure or apparent failure set you up for later success? Or to put it a different way, do you have a favorite failure of yours?
I call my failures my doctorates. And and I say that because you've got to learn from them, right? And they can be costly, hence the doctorate level. And so a lot of that, I'm gonna have to go back on faith, right? And I'm gonna speak on faith for a second here, and that's the fact that the good Lord will answer your prayers in unsuspecting ways. And a lot of times that's not the plan that you had in play. But you have to be willing to take that obstacle, take that challenge, and blow through it and take perspective from it and go, my prayer was answered, because I wouldn't be who I am standing here right now if I hadn't gone through that experience. And so that's the best way I can sum that up is take those experiences not as failures, but take them as opportunities to persevere.
Because the Lord's making all things work together for our good. And we don't always understand it. Sometimes it's crazy, but it's for our best. So speaking of crazy or wild, what's an unusual habit or absurd thing that you love, Nathan?
Oh, goodness. An unusual habit or absurd thing. I would have to say that I know out of my wife and I am energized by working out. So no matter how, and I know it's very relevant to this, but this is just like, it's kind of absurd to her because she's the opposite, right? She goes and works out and she's like exhausted, done. It energizes me, which is why I'm part of the 5 a.m. crew at CrossFit. And to miss that, some would be like, oh, you got to sleep in. That's like the worst. That's the worst way to start my day. Unless maybe an absurdity is that I can go like days without sleep. And I've tested that to the max.
I think all entrepreneurs have at some seasons.
Yes. So that would probably be the absurdity, is that I can power through. Here's a funny one. I've got kind of a trucker's bladder. I could probably drive across the whole country without stopping once.
It's the opposite for me.
That is, me too.
My children as well, which is why we did the motorhome thing a few years ago, because the bathroom's on board. So we're only stopping if we need gas or Dad's got to go. We're not stopping until we need gas.
So what are you most proud of in your business?
Most proud of in my business, staying staunchly true to values, staying closely cleaved to whether it's good for us or not, advising someone for what's good for them. And sometimes that's the last thing. Before I got into this podcast, that email I sent was, it does not make sense for you to do this financial decision, right? And matter of fact, one was maybe even helping them get it done with their own lender a different way, going through an assumption process, doing different things like that. So I'm most proud of walking out our core values, not just making them pretty little icons that look good on a website or on a business card.
Or taking the quick buck.
Right. Because you go to You go to somebody that's hamburger and French fries, that's all they ask you. What
Right.
kind of hamburger do you want? You want a double, a triple? Do you want to supersize that? You want a large, pop? What do you want?
Yeah.
And they don't get past that. They don't go past the flesh level. And my team that I have supporting us and growing that message, they can, some of them come from the banking industry, and they've been able to just like they're like, this is surreal. We've been in the banking industry 10 plus years apiece, and no one does what you're doing, Nathan. So I promise you spend 15 minutes on the phone with us, I think you'll experience a difference. And that's from the business standpoint, what I'm proud of.
Yeah. What about in your life? What are you most proud of in your personal life?
I'm most proud of in my personal life, really focusing and striving on being that better version of myself, but understanding that I'm perfectly imperfect.
Yeah.
And that through God's grace, I'm able to really succeed and fail every day. Right. And just, and be forgiven to do that, and teach my children to accept and do the same. Be that for my wife.
Yeah.
Well,
That's awesome.
I love that message, man. So as you look ahead in life then, what excites you most about the future, Nathan? Like, what do you most look forward to?
What excites me the most, I would have to say, is there's probably no such thing, but I really look forward to the day of everything is just smooth, and from a business standpoint, all the right things are in place. And I know that's a dream, because we're all incrementally, we just got to focus on getting 1% better. The statistics behind getting 1% better are way better than trying to be 100% better.
Right.
And so that's really what I, as a vision, I want to see it just be more, more relevant, more widely known that there's a smart path.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. So G, why don't you ask this question? I know how much you love this one. You get to ask the billboard question.
All right. Last question, Nate. Well, second last question, Nathan. If you could make one statement to the world, what would that be? Or to put it another way, if you had to choose one thing to say on a billboard that will be seen by thousands or millions, what would that billboard say?
Be smart. I mean, call us today to make smart decisions about buying, selling, or refinancing, and you realize that we're even more valuable than just those three things when it comes to this journey of life.
Cool.
Love
Go ahead,
it.
Dallas.
I love it. So that billboard says be smart. Nate, tell people, obviously you are with the Kerpan Group at Benchmark Mortgage, and we've had this stuff up. For those of you watching the video version, you've seen it popping up in the lower thirds, but for our folks listening via audio, how can people find out a little bit more about you and about your business, and or get in touch with you?
Fantastic. So you can obviously check us out online. Simple website is www.champthedream.com. We also have the bat phone, we like to call it, for those that know what that means. That's generationally losing some steam. But they can reach us at 314-551-9587. And I love
that one again for everybody. 314?
Yeah, it's 314-551-9587. You can call it, you can text it. It truly is the bat phone. So if you want to get Batman and his cohorts, it's 314-551-9587.
Awesome. And then also, everybody, you can follow them on Instagram at your.mortgage.coach. Be sure and get those dots in between, your.mortgage.coach on Instagram, or on Facebook.com at Your Mortgage Coach. And again, that's Nathan Kerpan with the Kerpan Group at Benchmark Mortgage.
Now you can also Google us with the hashtag Your Mortgage Coach, all one word.
That's
as
right.
Well, and we're dominating that hashtag.
I love that you guys have that. That's baller. Like that's the hashtag, man. That's the one to have.
Yeah,
you own that space.
That's almost better than hashtag dad brag. Although I'm still convinced I want to get that one going. Nathan, let me be the first to say thank you so much for joining us as our guest here today on the podcast. And again, everybody, check them out. Again, Google #YourMortgageCoach, but also champthedream.com. Great way to get in touch with them. G, any final words here for Nate as we roll it out?
Just want to say thank you to Nate, and I want to say thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to this episode. You can always, as always, learn more about us at CrossFitEdwardsville.com. And if you want to learn about what your fitness journey looks like here, book a no sweat conversation with us. But for now, I want to, Dallas, thank you for joining me on the podcast today. Nate, thanks for joining us on the podcast today. To the audience, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, have yourselves a championship day.